We've now come to the portion of our audience participation. We have Carl Turin over there manning the microphone on that side. We have Lorraine Marcantonio operating the microphone on that side. Also, for our people watching on television at home, remember the phone number is area code 203-264-9644, extension 222. Can I have the first person?
My name's Irv Borensweig, resident of Heritage Village. This is addressed to John. John, the First Selectman was very specific in some of his accomplishments over the last 2 years. Could you be more specific as to what you would have done differently than he has done?
That's a very good question. That presumes that I know everything that Ed has done. The question was, what would I do different than what Ed has done? I don't know that I can state everything that Ed has done. I became a candidate in May. Prior to May, I did not follow the town government and what was going on in any level of detail. Once I announced, I became more involved, and I've gone to a number of Board of Selectmen meetings to find out what was going on. One of the things that I would do differently than Ed, because I think what has come out at the end of all of that work, in many cases, has been very positive. One of the things that I would do differently is I would give credit to the people that actually have done the work. The Southbury Training School, for example, I think has been a major accomplishment for the town of Southbury, and I think Ed did participate in that process. But once again, I would give credit to Representative Arthur O'Neill, who for 28 years has worked on it. Now, some people have said, well, he worked on it for 28 years, and Ed came in 2 years, and look what he did. When you build something, it takes preparation. And to get legislation through the state capitol requires a substantial amount of work. And from my perspective, Arthur laid the groundwork. There's other things that have gone on. We talk about the basketball court and recreation and all that stuff. If you follow, a lot of these projects were begun long ago in other administrations. That's not to say that Ed didn't bring them to the forefront. I think he did, and he should get credit for that. But there's a lot of work that's done by the town employees, the town departments, and the volunteers that I think should be highlighted and given more attention. And many of these people, whether you recognize it or not, have been dispirited by the way that the town is managed at the highest levels. I mean, if you follow the town website and the town Facebook page, it looks like one person is doing all the work in town. That's not true. It's a community effort. Town employees and volunteers, a total of about 500 people that make Southbury the great town that it is. So how would I differ? I would differ in the way we accomplish things and how we give credit to people. I think that's important. I think it's important because it motivates people. And I think it's important because you get the best work from town employees and volunteers when you recognize their contributions. Thank you.
Well, I do get a... Yeah, you get a... Okay, just, I don't want to cut you off. Let's see. I want to start really with the training school and remind you that even before I took office, one of the first meetings I held was with our legislative team, Arthur O'Neill, Rob Kane, and David Labriola. And I said, how can we all work together? Because there are things, the election's behind us, how can we work together? And very specifically said, how can we work together on the training school farmlands? I have tried to collaborate with our legislative leaders from even before day one of taking the oath of office. And in doing that, throughout that process, I've worked not only with Arthur's office to try and keep informed, but most importantly, and the difference, why we have those farmlands preserved, is not about me, and it's not about Arthur, it's about our governor. Our governor gets it. Our governor understands what open space is about, and our governor now understands, or the governor we have now, understands why farmland preservation is important. And if you talk to anybody in Hartford, they will explain that to you. That's the difference, the new governor. I had a relationship with the governor. I was able to get him to recognize that we had a tremendous opportunity, not just for Southbury, but if you were at the meeting that took place a week ago with the farmland preservation, you would see throughout the state, every organization involved with farming is looking to what we did, all of us, what we did at the Southbury Training School farmlands as the model going forward for so many other pieces of state land. Now, I am very proud of all of the accomplishments. I believe, despite the things that I hear said about me, if you actually look at the Facebook page, I really come in second to all of the pets that get advertised by our animal control people. They are much more prevalent on our website, whether it's cats, dogs. I can't beat them. So the Facebook page has clearly been used, in my mind, as part of my accountability, in addition to this, as part of my accountability to you, the voters. In the past, you haven't had the opportunity to know what does the First Selectman do, day to day, week to week. Many people would ask, what does a First Selectman do? I go by the office, he's not in the office, he must be home, taking a bath or something. There's actually a lot of activity that a First Selectman does, not just me, but the people before me, Bill Davis, Mark Cooper. Some of it's in town where we go visit people, we look at sites, we follow up, we walk the walk, as we say. Sometimes we have to go to meetings in Waterbury. We're part of something known as the Council of Governments. My peers have just recently asked or elected me as the chair of that Council of Governments of 8 communities that surround Waterbury to look for ways that we can work together to be more efficient. And now that I'm chair, we're already starting about some new ways that we can do things. And sometimes we even go to Hartford. That's how we got some things done this year, in the past 2 years, that we weren't able to do before. Again, I've been asked by our next door neighbor, Barbara Henry, a Republican, to serve on the Council of Small Towns as a member of the Board of Directors. This is a group that works with our legislature to make sure that the interests of small towns are taken into consideration. So there's a lot that goes to that. When I'm away, how do you know what I'm doing? I've used Facebook to talk about those activities, and so you'll know when I'm doing that. But it's also used to highlight things that go on in town. Southbury Celebration, great event this past weekend. We advertise that because we want people to know they're part of a community where things are happening. It wasn't my event. Brian Jones deserves an amazing amount of credit for keeping this annual event going year after year. So I really take exception to this, I think, tired cliche that I don't share in the successes that go on in town that are done by volunteers who I've given credit to. Don Antilla, as an example, all of his excellent photography work that now is in our hallways. Done a phenomenal job there, as well as in the Plan of Conservation and Development, as well as many of our employees. And you're just beginning to see, I think, some of the amazing work that was done by our animal control people. We'll talk a little bit more about this tomorrow night, unless there are questions about it. But the efforts of these folks to identify a very significant problem in our community, I think, was really pretty phenomenal. And they're getting the credit they deserve in the Republican American as we speak. It's not the first time. Some of you might remember an animal cruelty case that came up last year, unfortunately, still going through the courts, something we can't control. But that wasn't my initiative. That was an animal control officer stepping up and saying, we can't stand for this kind of behavior in our community. Thank you.
I just want to know if there has been any progress on the Southbury beach to make it more accessible to people like me and other seniors. Ed.
Well, this is the specific question is with regard to something used to be called the town beach. This is an area where the Pomperaug River ends up meeting the Housatonic River, or what we now call Lake Zor. And so this is an area, it's actually a beautiful area, right at the confluence of these two rivers. When I got here, it was a mess. I mean, my first walk out there, it was pitiful. There was a chain link fence. It was locked, said nobody could enter, except next to the fence, the gate or the chain link was all gone. So it was almost like a cartoon, where you can't get through the door, you just need to walk around the door jamb. So it was kind of silly. There were telephone wires that were kind of hanging down sort of precariously from poles, but I followed the wires and they went to a ripped out telephone case. So we had telephone wires hanging around on poles doing nothing. We had park benches or picnic benches that were all rotted out. And so it was pretty much a state of disrepair. What we've done is said to the Parks and Rec Commission is we need a plan for what do we want to do there. And they are working on that. And there is one other issue that you've raised too, which was accessibility to this beautiful beach area was precarious at best. It was so steep, you could not walk down it with ease, and getting back up was very difficult for anybody. So we have Parks and Rec putting together a concerted plan for the area. We've renamed it because we don't want the liability of people being there to swim. Unfortunately, occasionally, it has bacterial problems associated with the lake. And we don't have the budget right now to put a lifeguard there. So we've renamed it River Road Park in reference to the fact that it's right along River Road. We have a Boy Scout now who's come in and put all new picnic benches as part of his Eagle project. We've removed all of those fake telephone wires or obsolete telephone wires. And by the way, the what do you call it? The injury, the insult to the injury was we were actually paying AT&T for that telephone line. Nobody had looked into how many telephone lines we have been paying for that are going nowhere. We've done a lot of consolidation, and we've been paying for lines that are no longer being used. That was one example of it. And we've made a lot of improvements there. But I would like to point out this is part of a concerted effort about looking at all of our parks and our recreational facilities. And it's been a long time in coming, I think. We have a park called Cedarlands Park. Our Parks and Rec director didn't even know it existed. And believe me, once he saw it, he wished it did not exist. But we've talked to the people in that community, and we said, what do you want done here? Again, much like we saw at Community Park, there's a busted up basketball court, which I think is more of a hazard than anything. But we've asked the people in the community, what would you like to see here? And the Parks and Rec Commission, again, is putting together a proposal there. We also took our liability seriously, and we went to our insurance agent and found out that one of the free services we could have been taking advantage of is that they are licensed as, and I didn't even know this existed, but a playground insurance expert. They come in and evaluate playgrounds to say, are they safe? Now the playgrounds, looking around, many of you remember playgrounds the way I do. You remember the seesaw. That's no longer kosher. You don't have seesaws anymore. Too dangerous. But there's a list of playground equipment that we still have, not anymore really, but we still had 2 years ago, that are now considered dangerous liabilities from our insurance company point of view. And we now have a book that they've prepared, and we are checking off as we complete each one of those issues that need to be addressed, including the fact that we now know we need to completely replace all of the playground equipment at Ballantyne Park because it is so old, obsolete, and poses a danger. So very committed to our parks and our recreational facilities. Needs to be done in a concerted way so that we not only install them, like the beautiful things we've done over at Settlers Park, but we keep paying attention to maintenance. I can't stress that enough. Now, a lot of people put the focus on first cost, buy something. It's always sexy to buy something new. But really what keeps a town sustainable is making sure you're maintaining things. And I think in the last 2 years, we have set that balance a whole lot better than it was before. Thank you.
I have a question, sir, for you. Hello, I'm John Webster, and I've lived in Heritage Village for 23 years. I was also a volunteer at the training school for several years, working with PV-13. My question is, I know you haven't been here long enough to develop a long history, but maybe you could tell me, because I've been interested for years, in, you're looking around, I'm over here.
No, I'm wondering, who are you addressing the question to?
Yes, I'm asking you.
Me?
Yes. Pardon?
I've been here 35 years in town, so when you said I haven't been here very long, I didn't know what you meant. I'm sorry.
Oh, what I meant was you said you hadn't been aware a lot of the things that had been happening in the village. Now, maybe I
don't
didn't hear
believe I
correctly.
said that, but go ahead.
My question is, if you were here and alert doing all your time here, you can tell me what Mr. O'Neill had accomplished, not just that he worked on, but what did he accomplish in terms of the Southbury Training School? We already know what Ed has accomplished.
Arthur, do you want to address that? I'm not sure that I can address that directly.
Is that appropriate?
I understand.
I mean, I'll be happy to answer the question.
I think this is a forum between John and Ed and not Mr. O'Neill, so I would prefer to move on. And this is Mr. Monteleone's time to gets a couple of minutes to answer what Mr. Edelson had said.
Right. Good, thank you. One of the things that I think would be important in terms of understanding how your government works, I've been going to the Board of Selectmen meetings now for quite some time. I would like to have the opportunity, if we can do it from a technology standpoint, to actually do live streaming of the Board of Selectmen meetings. Things go on in the Board of Selectmen meetings that affect everyone in this room. And the approaches that are taking and the discussions that go on in the Board of Selectmen meeting are a very, very good indicator of the government that we have in town. What is done is minutes are taken, and the minutes are interpretation of what went on. There's audio taken, and in some cases, audio doesn't work or is garbled. But nothing would be better than live streaming of the Board of Selectmen meetings. And if I'm elected, I'd like to find out if we can do that so that people everywhere, including Heritage Village, so that we could better address the question of the gentleman in the back, what actually goes on in the running of the government. And I would pledge to do that. I don't know if Mr. Edelson would pledge to do that, but if I'm your first selectman, I would have live streaming of the Board of Selectmen meetings. That way you would know what's going on in your town. Thank you.
Lorraine, we have a question over here. I guess I'm going to have to be the mayor.
What effect on the town is the current government shutdown going to be?
Well, I think the easy answer, other than it's a very depressing situation to see that we have such a dysfunctional federal government and that it can't continue to do the work that we think is necessary. We are very, as a town, we are pretty independent of any funding directly from the federal government on a day-to-day basis. If this goes on, then we become more concerned. And probably the biggest area is with regard to transportation. Although we say a lot of times we get money from the state DOT, a lot of the money the state Department of Transportation gets actually comes from the federal government. So the federal government ends up with a very large pot of money through our taxes, and then it allocates that out to the states, and then very much right on down to us. So we have one very important project that's moving its way forward. It's been unfortunately going on since 1995, and that's a small bridge over what we call Spruce Brook. But basically, we hope that that money is set aside and is safe, so it shouldn't affect us. But what we're most concerned about is that when we first came to office, we met with Stu Summers, a former member of our Board of Selectmen, and a noted engineer who spent a lot of time building and making a lot of the projects here in Southbury work. And we said to Stu, what's out there that we should be concerned about? And the first thing he said is the bridge over the Pomperaug River. It is not in good shape. It has been rated as not in good shape year after year, and nobody in Town Hall has done anything about it. And we got onto that right away. That's the bridge that some people just refer to as River Road as you go, and when you're driving over it, it just seems like a continuation of the road. But it is a bridge, I don't know, maybe 40, 50 feet above the river at that point. And we've been very aggressive about not only getting some initial grants for that, 30% covered by the first grant that we were able to have awarded, but we want to do more in that area. So if some of that grants becomes affected, we would have a problem. I guess another one that we have to pay attention to is this town, year in and year out, had applied for something called the Small Cities Grant. And here again, it's the same type of idea. Starts with the federal government's Housing and Urban Development with an initiative nationwide to try to keep low and moderate income people living in their homes. But some people fall on hard times, and they'll have something like a roof all of a sudden needs repairing, but they don't have the money. They have the house, but they don't have the money to do the roof repair. This is a revolving fund that allows people to get a zero-interest loan, and whenever either they sell the house or they pass on, then the loan is repaid at that point, and the money goes back on a revolving basis. When we got into office 2 years ago, that money was down to about $60,000 that was left. And when I said, well, how come we're not trying to promote the $60,000, let people know it's there? They said, well, we don't want to promote it because then we'd use it up. Okay? I said, well, could we get more? And that led to the question of course we could get more. We just have to apply for the grant. Now, we've been awarded that pretty recently. I can't remember if it was a month or 2 months ago. And but we don't have the money yet. We're still going through some of the, just the administrative stuff of getting the money. But the amazing thing is part of that process, the overwhelming number of people who came forward and said, if you had that program, I would really want to apply because I have that need. I am living in a home, I want to stay there, but I can't afford to do, whether it's the heating system, the roof, or any other major mechanical system that's necessary to stay in a home safely. And so we've been getting, if you will, back onto the swing of this. I'm not trying to say this is brand new with us. The town has done it many times before. In the 90s, it did it, and then it seems to just have forgotten about some of these programs. So that's my fear, is that some of the grant-making programs, which are a major part about the way money is distributed in this country. People can take exception to it one way or another, but that's the grant program is the way Congress works. And to some degree, it's the way Hartford works. It's a way for them to set direction for the country and saying, here are needs that we've identified as a nation or as a state. We need to implement it, people at the local level to do things. That's our job. We're the implementers. And I'm proud to do that, and I'm proud to say we've been very successful in getting some of that grant money and putting it to work here in Southbury.
I have a question. I have a question for John. John. Oh, I'm sorry. Please excuse me.
Regarding the partial government shutdown, I think you know that the Social Security and Medicare payments are continuing. The other thing that you may not know is there have been 17 government shutdowns in the past. The most recent was in 1996. Stocks dropped during 9 of them, and stocks went up during 8 of them. And the good news, actually, after the shutdowns ended, the following 12 months, on average, the stock market went up 13.3% over what it was before the shutdown. Now, what that means in terms of whether this is good or bad, I don't think it's good. But as Ed said, I think the parties, both in Washington and in Hartford, in order to affect change, sometimes have to do things that are dramatic and to get the country's attention. And they certainly have our attention, and we'll have to see how it plays out. But I think I'm an optimistic person. I think the country will be fine, and I think at the end, whatever agenda is being pressed, we'll certainly have more information about it. Thank you.
My question is more local, because I can't do anything about Washington. My question, as I age in place, is one of the things I would like to see in Southbury is more available public transportation. Public transportation. Now, I know we've been talking about that for a while, a long time, in our town here, but do you have any new good plans or out-of-the-box thinking to get public transportation in and around our town and Waterbury and Danbury? Thank you.
That's an excellent question. To be honest with you, I don't know what has been done in the past regarding transportation in and around Southbury. The approach that I've taken in my career and new jobs that I've gotten is I go in and I assess what the situation is. I've not made an assessment of public transportation in our community or what we could do with Waterbury or Danbury. So I don't want to give you an answer that is not well-founded on fact, first of all. But the approach I would use would be find out what are the needs, and then what are the opportunities to satisfy that need, both from the standpoint of the points of pickup and how do we pay for it. One of the things that I'm concerned about is the issue of fiscal responsibility. People have many, many needs in our town, but the question is, can we pay for the needs at this time? Our economy has been sinking since 2008. People have received tax increases. I know that in Heritage Village, the taxes have gone down, but they've gone down at the expense of property values falling 40%. That's certainly not good news. So my answer is based upon our ability to pay for it.
I appreciate your honesty. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, well, to some degree, I agree with John. That's the way to approach it. And in fact, that is what I did. I identified it very quickly that if you do any analysis of senior issues, the number one thing is transportation. And we tried to bring together not only Heritage Village Master Association, but Pomperaug Woods, Watermark, and the Hearth to talk about, as a community, we've got lots of buses. I don't know if you've noticed those buses. Most of them are not really filled up. And what could we do together? Now, we ran into a number of problems in doing that, and then we pulled back and we tried to work a lot harder just with Heritage Village Master Association, and things evolved in a way that the association said, maybe not right now, even though, and I hope I don't offend people, I think we had identified a way to provide more transportation at lower cost for both combined basis for the village and for the town of Southbury. So once again, always looking for, can we do better services at lower cost? And I think whenever you can mutualize, regionalize, bring people together, you have that opportunity. But what I would like to let you know is our senior services people, although they were frustrated that we couldn't really make the progress that we'd identified, they did come out just this week with a new brochure called Senior Transportation Options for Southbury. So we were able, from all of this work over these 2 years, to basically provide in one place, I think I counted it, there's 16 different transportation services. It's really kind of an alphabet soup of all the different programs, and they're all different. This can be used for this reason, this for that reason. Here in one place you see it all spelled out. And I think that's a step forward, but I still believe transportation is an issue, and not only for seniors, but it affects everyone living in this town. Because when people who have no options are driving when they shouldn't be driving, the rest of the community is going to pay for that sooner or later. And I think before I sit down, I'd just like to make one comment. We talk a lot in this country about the divide between Wall Street and Main Street. And I think John gave you about the best example I've seen of somebody who doesn't understand the difference between Wall Street doing well by so many people are going to be personally affected by this shutdown. People who are government employees, that doesn't make them bad people. Government employees have children. Government employees have mortgages. They have commitments they need. And now, because of a dysfunctional government, they are going to find themselves behind the 8 ball. And to talk about what Wall Street's going to do is, to my mind, pretty secondary to all of the people who are not going to be able to come back from this for some time, because this is real money out of their pockets. The money was taken out of their pockets from the sequester. They had to work a shorter year. That means less money for them. Now this on top of it, that they're being told they can't show up for work. I'm just a little, I'll leave it at that.
We're getting late on time, but I just got to make one comment, and I get an opportunity to ask a question. First of all, the town of Southbury ought to thank a lady named Carolyn Mayer, who put most of that information together, who worked here in Heritage Village to get that together. Now, see, I can get angry too. Last year, we had a blizzard. The blizzard cost the community, this community, almost $1 million. When we asked for aid, we were told by the federal government and the powers that be that it wasn't available. It's not available to a homeowners association. It's only available to a town. Now, I understand the town needed the money, but we also needed the money, and we pay for it in our maintenance fee. Ed, you have a perfect opportunity to bring our cause forward, because you're president or chairman of the community around the city of Waterbury, and you have influence with the governor. And I know there have been discussions about allowing large communities to participate in some of the FEMA money that's available that the towns get, or the state money that the towns get. And I'd like to hear what both of you candidates have to say about that idea. First, Ed.
Well, as Ron knows, we've been meeting for almost 20 months, once a month, with the Heritage Village Master Association, president, vice president, and the executive director, specifically to speak about where we can work together, share I'm sorry. Okay, I thought somebody couldn't hear me. Share in our expenditures, so combining our purchasing power, like we recently tried to do with electricity. But we have explored many different grant opportunities on your behalf, whether it's regard to the bus situation or the transportation that we just talked about. And we do keep hitting ourselves up against the brick wall that says, as a private organization, there are real limitations of what we can do. And I think Ron knows, and others of you know, that other large condo associations like Woodlake have organized themselves differently. And so that they are I'm not going to get the right term, but they're basically a tax entity. And so that they then do qualify some of these grants. But until that happens, as far as my knowledge, we'll continue to work this is if we have additional leads. And look for ways. But as long as you're going to say you're private, as long as you're going to say these facilities are only for people living in this community, all of that's going to preempt anything that's going to sound like government funding. Because everything we do at the government, quite honestly, says got to be made available to all. When I say government, meaning outside of Southbury. That's just part of the game of being part or of utilizing government funds. So we will, if I'm still in office come December, I am committed to continuing to work through our monthly meetings that I think have been pretty productive, and we'll look for additional opportunities. And yes, I would be glad in my position with the Council of Small Towns, talking to them to see if we can lobby for some, slight opening of the door, if you will, or a little bit of light that could provide an opportunity for some of this. But I think our best bet is, and I feel like we've made some progress here. Most of you know the history of Heritage Village, which was it was very distinct from Southbury. In fact, it very much wanted to keep itself separate from Southbury through many of the early years. And now we realize, and people in Heritage Village realize, that's not sustainable. It's going to have to be much more of a combined effort. That begins by talking, I think John referred to that, finding where there's mutual interest, and how do we move forward together to be more efficient, because no one in this world now can afford not to be efficient, to look for waste every day. Is there waste going on? And if there is waste, what can we do to eliminate it? We have tremendous purchasing power because of all of the activity that goes on here at the within Heritage Village, and I think with what the town does, as well as potentially other condominium associations. Oldfield Condominium has learned about some of the things we've done with the Heritage Village. They've said, whoa, we'd like to join in on that. We should be open to this idea of working with regional purchasing activities or cooperatives. This makes good sense to me. Always got to look at the details, but that's clearly something that if it can be beneficial to the town and to Heritage Village, I'm all for it. Thank you.
The reason that something has never been done before doesn't mean that it cannot be done. The budget here in Heritage Village, I understand to be $16 million. The town budget is $19 million. With that amount of money, I think there's probably ways that we can do things better than in the past. And the idea of private, I believe, is correct, the issue regarding the snow removal and so forth. However, that doesn't mean there's not a way to resolve this, either through the local efforts or through working with our state legislators. I think there may be some ways, not only in snow removal, but in other areas of services that are being done here in Heritage Village in terms of perhaps combining them with things that we can do in the town. Are there quick answers to it? No. Are there ways that we can work together to determine if there are ways that we can reduce costs? Yes. Would I be committed to that? Yes, I would. Thank you.